Welcome back to week 9 of the DSR channel, and I'm going over the Forgotten Realms Heroes of Faerun book, doing the origin and general feats, because a lot of them go together, and a little bit of backgrounds, although I'm not going to go to details of backgrounds because some of those go together as well. Right off, here's my ranking for every one of these, and don't worry about like doing a screen capture. You can go to the Google Drive. I've got this as a PDF in the Google Drive and a CSV, so you can like sort things. But in this view, what I've done, and I debated this quite a bit, which way to do this, but because like there's sets of feats that go together, like Cult of the Dragon Initiate and Dragon Scarred, because you can't get Dragon Scarred without Cult of the Initiate, Cult of the Dragon Initiate. So I put the origin feat and the general feat next to each other. So that's why it goes every other one like that. And then all the other ones that aren't paired with an origin feat, those are at the end by themselves. But that's why I did the CSV. That way you can just like sort this and compare the origin feats to each other, or sort it, however you like. And on that point, I want to mention a couple things about my ranking. So the ranking of the origin feats is relative to only the other origin feats, right? Those rankings are not relative to every feat in the game. Okay, that would be not, that comparison doesn't make sense because general feats are much more powerful. So even though the Cult of the Dragon Initiate is next to Dragon Scarred, try to keep in your mind that those are not on the same ranking scale. So a few other notes about this. You see that I rank these, and one of the things that I'm passionate about, and I do a lot with on this channel, is I don't rank. I don't just simply rank something as is it ABC. I put it ranked on relative to a role, and you can see those here. So there's the 10 roles in those middle columns, tank to face those 10 roles, and so I rank it relative to that role. So like you can see. Emerald Enclave, right? Uh, Emerald Enclave Fledgling and Enclave Magic has a rating for both it has ratings in the face role. That means it gives face functionality or functionality that's relative to being the face of the party. Not good ones because it got D's. And if the cell is blank, then that feat has no features for that role. Okay, in how I define them. And then you see those 3 columns at the end that have like a purple header. That means that those are features for your character. They're not roles for the party, right? So you can you can give your character more survivability, but having good survivability is not a role that you play in the party, right? If the only thing you're good at is surviving and you do no damage and you don't help anyone and you don't heal anyone, like then you're pointless in the party, right? I guess you'd be the last guy standing in every fight, you know. Self buff, same kind of thing. Self buff is kind of a bit of a catch-all because um, and I only put entries in self buff if I couldn't figure out how to align it to something else, right? So like Lord's Alliance Agent gives features that are good for tanking, basically anything that does martial damage or attack rolls. If I recall correctly, we'll get into the details. So we got a B, and C there. And that's the nature of it is a self buff, but it was a self buff that I could assign specifically to helping those kinds of rolls, damage dealing rolls. That's what it is. Those are the 4 damage dealing rolls. Well, minus blaster, 4 of the 5 damage dealing rolls. So if I can't like put it in that, in one of the other boxes and how it's buffing, then I just put it in the generic box of it's just a self buff. And then there's versatility, right? And the versatility specifically meaning it doesn't fall into any other category. There's a number of things that are useful, like all of the knowledge skills, skill proficiencies. I think those are useful. They just don't contribute to a specified role in the party. Like you're not the knowledge guy, like the guy who knows things. That's not a role. But having those skill proficiencies is useful, and so I kind of put those into a versatility category. Okay, so we got 10 roles for the party, 3 things that are valuable but aren't a role. And one last thing I want to cover to help make this a little less confusing. Now, you don't have to agree with my definitions of the roles and things like that, right? But you at least have to understand what I mean by them, or you'll have no idea how by what criteria I'm ranking things, right? So with healer and support specifically, I separated those so you can be a healer or a support, right? Like wizards and sorcerers have a fair number of support spells, but they have very few healing spells. And so I put a lot of time and thought into separating those. So healer is when you are restoring a character, right? You're restoring their hit points by healing them, or you're removing debuffs and restoring their capability to full capability, right? Whether you're removing the prone condition by helping them stand up, or you're removing right? Paralysis, poison, frightened, right? You're removing those debuffs and you're restoring them to full functionality. Support is buffing your allies, either with some kind of functional buff or buffing their hit points with temporary hit points. So temporary hit points, and this is the one I think is most confusing, which is why I want to reiterate it. Temporary hit points are a support function in my definition. Restoring hit points is a healing function. Okay, let's get into it. All right, so I want to talk about these ones first. These ones are all tied to a background, and I wish they hadn't done that because it's same kind of problem with like the Big B's Glory of the Giants feats they created that were interesting and cool, but they're tied to a background. Same thing with like the Dragonlance backgrounds. They did a little better with the Dragonlance backgrounds, but here's the problem, right? With doing it this way, okay? The background gives you that origin feat, and you can take that origin feat with your general feat slots, but origin feats are far less powerful than a general feat. So it would be a big sacrifice to use one of your general feat slots to take an origin feat just so you can qualify for that general feat. You can do it, it hurts more. So the only other way to do it is be a human, so you get a bonus origin feat, right? So then you can have whatever background you want and choose this origin feat, or be a warlock, right? And then you can take lessons of the first ones. And so I foresee that not that there's going to be a lot of players who start making characters who are one of these factions, but when they do make one of these characters who are one of these factions, a majority of them are either going to be human or warlocks. So there's going to be so many warlocks, a member of the Purple Dragon Squire warlocks, right? It's actually a pretty good combo if you're a Blade warlock. So, all right, so I'm going to talk about these ones first, and I'll have thoughts at the end about how I think they should have done this completely differently. Like this would have been the perfect time to flesh out their faction renown system. And yes, the faction renown system is in the Dungeon Master's Guide. They give guidance about how to gain renown using downtime. They give and quests. They give guidance about the break points of like at renown 3, renown 5, renown 10, renown 25, and renown 50. Like they have all this guidance on that stuff and give no mechanics for what you get for achieving that. There's just this vague stuff like, well, they like you more. So they should have done that. I guess that's my final thoughts. They should have done that instead of this. Instead of creating backgrounds tied to those factions, they should have just given you the faction system. It's a totally separate thing, and that way you could be building your renown with the Harpers, and once you reach a certain point, like, I don't know, 5 or 10, you get this origin feat. And then at 10 or 25, you get this general feat. That is what they should have done. Dragon Cultist. So this is the Dragon Cultist background. I'm not going to go over it again, but the Dragon Cultist background gives you the Cult of the Dragon Initiate feat. So follow the yellow arrows, right? Okay, so the Cult of the Dragon Initiate origin feat, Dragon's Tongue. Draconic. If you already know Draconic, when you select this feat, you instead learn one language of your choice from the language tables of the player's handbook. I like languages. I play with them, I guess, more than other DMs. I think it's a lot of fun and adds anyway. So, but that's kind of a weak feature, right? Even anyway. So not great, but kind of useful. Dragon's Terror. You can take a magic action to instill fear in a creature you can see within 30 feet of yourself. The target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw, standard DC calculation based on your wisdom, or have the frightened condition until the end of your next turn. If the target succeeds on the save, or when the effect ends for a target, the target is immune to this effect for 24 hours. So that's interesting because there's no limit to how many times you can do this. The limit is on how many times you can do this to a specific creature, kind of like the Friends cantrip, right? So that's actually pretty strong for an origin feat, right? You can just be frightening people as your action. Now, it only lasts till the end of your next turn, but this would be a great addition to somebody who's wanting to play a controller. So round 1, you drop your Tasha's Hideous Laughter or your Sleep Spell or Hypnotic Pattern, whatever you got. And then every round after that, whoever it succeeded on the save, you just hit them with this to frighten them. And you could just kind of cycle through everybody. If you want to just be the super controller and you don't care about dealing damage, especially since this isn't consuming any resources. You're not spending more spell slots like on a command spell. You can just keep doing this. So relatively strong for a origin feat. And the final feature you get from that is Inspired by Fear. When you cause a creature to have the frightened condition and you are the source of its fear, you can gain heroic inspiration if you lack it. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. Uh, even more powerful. So whenever you frighten somebody, so even more reason to use this. When you frighten somebody, you gain heroic inspiration. Now you can only gain heroic inspiration once per rest, short rest, long rest. But that's still good. I mean, that's a good buff. So starting off strong with Cult of the Dragon Initiate. And if you have Cult of the Dragon Initiate, that qualifies you to take Dragon's Guard at level 4 or higher as a general feat. And Dragon's Guard gives you an ability score increase, and you can choose Constitution or Charisma, which is not the ideal combo, because Constitution feats are those kinds. Increasing feats are the ones that you don't take first usually. Like the only one who might take that first is a tank, somebody who's wanting to play the tank role. Everyone else, like you got to get your primary ability score up first, right? Your attack, spell, ability score first. You want to get that in 20 before you start building Constitution. And even then, you often want to get like Dexterity second, just to raise your AC for a lot of classes or a lot of builds. So Constitution isn't a great one, but Charisma, this means, great for bards, warlocks, sorcerers. Damage resistance. When you gain this feat, choose acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison. You have resistance to the chosen damage type. That's, again, pretty strong. There's not a lot of feats that just give you a damage type resistance. Now, I say that relative to other feats, right? Not a lot of feats give you that. How strong is it to have that? And you choose it for one damage type and can't change it. Not super strong, right? Because these damage types are not the damage type you're going to be taking all the time. But several of them start coming up pretty commonly, so it'll be useful, but it's not nearly as useful as like Barbarian Rage, right? Barbarian Rage beats this by a mile. So useful, not super strong. Now, Fearsome Power, the last feature. When you deal damage to a creature as part of the attack or magic action on your turn, you can use the Dragon's Terror benefit of the Cult of the Dragon Initiate, so it's referring back to your origin feat. You can use that as a bonus action this turn. Okay. And now those two things combo together, suddenly this is very powerful. Because now you have a weaponized bonus action that takes no resources, and it triggers to activate it. All you have to do is attack or cast a spell, which that's the main thing everybody's doing, right? Like that's the main thing everybody's doing with their action. So all you have to do is do the thing you were probably going to do anyway, and now you can frighten somebody as a bonus action, and if you succeed, give yourself heroic inspiration. Now, again, heroic inspiration is once per rest, but what a strong combo, right? And here, so that you don't have to like look back at the chart, I'm just going to repost the specifics of the feats on the screen as I go. All right. So we're starting off with some bangers. Okay. Cult of the Dragon, Initiate, B and B. Dragon's Guard is B as a controller. B is in self buff from that heroic inspiration, which you can just use on any D20 roll, right? Or sorry, any roll, any roll in the game, a damage roll, a D100 roll when you're rolling for a Bastion event, right? Any roll. Nice self buff from heroic inspiration. Then Dragon's Guard, and A as a controller now, because now you can do that as your bonus action and still use your action to do something more important. So like Tasha's Hideous Laughter as your action, and then Fear as a bonus action. It's just, wow. And then Survival, right? Which is, I give it a B. Again, this is relative to not every feature in the game. This is relative to every other general feat. So I give it a B Survival for that damage resistance. Emerald Enclave Caretaker is the background that leads you to Emerald Enclave Fledgling, which gives you the following benefits. Speak with animals. You always have Speak with Animals prepared and can cast it with any spell slot you have. Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma is your spellcasting ability for this spell. Choose when you select it. When you cast the spell as a ritual, its duration is 8 hours. Tag Team. When you take the help action, you can switch places with a willing ally within 5 feet of yourself as part of the same action. This movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. You can't use this benefit if the ally has the incapacitated condition. So this one's interesting. And not, spoiler alert, not good, in my opinion. So you get Speak with Animals, which is, a fun spell, a flavorful spell. I've seen players cast it twice in my whole 3 times. Okay, let's call it 3 or 4 times. I can count it on one hand. In all of my 5th edition experience, can count it on one hand how many times a player has cast this. And I wish they would cast it more. That was one of the things I loved about when Baldur's 3 came out. People started casting Speak with Animals more often because of that game. And then they like tapered off. I don't know why. So it's not a spell that's often used. I wish they would use it more. But the biggest problem with that spell is what class is the most likely to want to join or be a member of the Emerald Enclave? Druid, right? You chose a druid and you're like, yep, that sounds just like the flavor of what I'm going for. I'm going to be a member of the Emerald Enclave. You choose this, and guess what? Druids get Speak with Animals for free at first level. Druidic. Your level 1 feature, Druidic, gives you Speak with Animals, always prepared. So you're not even benefiting from the free spell preparation. Now, Druidic doesn't give you a free casting of it, but it's still a ritual spell, so you could have just cast it as a ritual now. So there's the one small benefit left, which is when you cast this as a ritual using Emerald Enclave Fledgling, it lasts 8 hours. Normally, it lasts 10 minutes. So, okay, I guess you're getting that benefit. Yeah, still disappointing. The tag team part sounds interesting, but the help action is almost never worth spending your action on. And there's only 2 ways to get the help action as a bonus action that I can think of. Maybe I'm missing something, but one is the Hobgoblin species. They can proficiency bonus times per day, take the help action as a bonus action. Okay, so on that species, this would be great. And then there's the Mastermind Rogue, who can also take the help action as a bonus action. So those 2 specific species or subclass, this is great for them, actually, right? Getting enhancements to the help action. Now, sorry, this helps them more. They're more interested in this. The ability to switch their places with an ally. I guess if you're like a tank or frontliner hobgoblin, then you're switching places with a skirmisher or a spellcaster who's in trouble. Great, that's pretty useful. But if you're that rogue, you don't want to switch places with people unless you're stuck on the front line and the tank is behind you and you're like, switch me places. I want to get out of here. So marginal, very, very circumstantial niche utility to that one. Enclave Magic. You can increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma. Great. That's what you want on magic type feats. Friends to animals. You have advantage on ability checks when taking the influence action with beasts. What? 2 hearts, 1 mind. You always have the Beast Sense spell prepared. You can cast it once without a spell slot, and you regain the ability to cast it in that way when you finish a long rest. When you cast it without a spell slot using this feature, it doesn't require concentration. You can also cast the spell using any spell slot you have at the appropriate level. The spellcasting ability is the ability you increase with this feat. Okay. Speak with Animals first. So Speak with Animals is interesting. It actually does what it says. It allows you to just speak with animals as if you shared a language. And then they added this note that says that also means you can now take any of the influence action skill options when you're interacting with that beast, okay? Which are all of those, right? So if you don't speak a language, then you can only use animal handling with a beast or a monstrosity. Interesting note there. But if you can speak with them via Speak with Animals, now you can try deception, intimidation, performance, or persuasion with the animal. Okay, so a small enhancement with a very niche creature type, beast. Again, players rarely try to use influence actions with beasts. So yes, it's still a benefit, but it is a weak one, okay? So what do you get from Beast Sense, all right? You're getting a level 2 spell. You might think, ooh, exciting. Beast Sense. When you touch a willing beast for the duration, you can perceive through the beast senses as well as your own. When perceiving through the beast senses, you benefit from any special senses it has. I have never seen a player cast this spell. I've often read this spell as a ranger beastmaster and wanted how can I make this cool, make it worthwhile, make it useful? Yes, you can cast a spell on them and then have the beast go scout for you. Right, druids could do that with their using wild shape to summon a familiar. Yeah, useful. It's basically gives you the same thing that Pact of the Chain warlocks can just do when they have the right invocations. I mean, Find Familiar lets you see through the animal's senses anyway on its own. I guess this difference is there's no range on this. Like Find Familiar, you can only see through this. You only have telepathy. You can see through their senses at a 100-foot range. This is no limitation. So yeah, if you need to send your familiar further than 100 feet, you can use this. Not great, and it's nice that you don't have to concentrate on it for that one free casting. But you wouldn't use this in combat. Like its combat utility is extremely limited. I would not spend my action in combat on this. So yeah, Emerald Enclave, Fledgling, D for support, D for face, Enclave Magic. Just because of that ability to send your animal familiar to go scout, I guess I gave it a C, and then D for face because yes, you're going to be a better face of the party when you're only when you're interacting with beasts specifically. Not very common. Like that's a niche circumstance. Doesn't happen often at all. So this is super weak. So we started off with a great one, a great set, and went to a terrible one. And it's even worse because the number one class who would want to take it is a druid, and that spell that the Origin Feat gives you, you already get. Like, and you can't choose. Like if they changed this and said, okay, if you already have Speak with Animals prepared and you can't unprepare it, then choose any other spell from the druid spell list. That would have been better, a lot better. That would have been way better. But yeah, okay. Harper. This is the Harper background, which gives you the Harper Agent Origin Feat, which gives you these features. Thieves Can't. You know Thieves Can't. Interesting. Instrument training. You gain proficiency with a musical instrument of your choice. Niche. Distracting Melody. When you take the help action to assist an ally's attack roll, the enemy you're distracting can be within 30 feet of you rather than within 5 feet of you, provided the enemy can see or hear you. So that's more interesting, but now we're back to the only people that, builds where you'd want to use this, because it's still not worth spending your action to take the help action most of the time, would be the Hobgoblin or the Mastermind Rogue. The Hobgoblin, I believe, can already do it at range. In fact, I think the Mastermind Rogue can already do it at range too. So both of those builds don't even benefit from this because they can already do it at range. So I don't know, they messed this one up. So that's not good. Harper Teamwork. Ability score increase, dexterity or charisma makes sense for Harpers. Withering Wordplay. When you take the help action to assist an ally's attack roll against an enemy, the enemy also has disadvantage on the first saving throw it makes before the start of your next turn. Now we're cooking, because giving disadvantage on saving throws is very powerful. That's maybe even worth your action, especially if you're like a support character. You're a healer support build. That's a strong support function. Like there's not a lot of ways to do that. So you would set up your blaster controller ally with this, and it takes no resources. It just takes your action. So now it's worth it for your action. Often, maybe not always, but often, and only for that, certain builds, right? If you're a damage dealing build, don't do this. Don't take this feat. Inspiring Willpower. If you succeed on a saving throw to end the frightened or paralyzed conditions on yourself, you can choose one ally you can see within 30 feet of yourself that has the same condition. The condition immediately ends on that ally. So that's pretty interesting. Those are conditions that happen fairly frequently. Frightened is pretty common. Paralyzed becomes more common later in the game. I wouldn't say it's common, but it becomes more common. And being able to just remove that from an ally with no additional action from yourself, like you just ended on an ally. Nice. So Harper Agent, bad. Harper Teamwork, good. Yeah. And Harper Teamwork, removing those debuffs is a healer function. Remember, in my definition, you don't have to agree on the definition. That's just how I'm defining it. So that's how these are ranked. So yeah. So this one's strange. So now with the Harper Teamwork feat, that's good enough that you would want that on a Hobgoblin species build or a Mastermind Rogue build, but you still had to waste your Origin feat on something that benefited you not at all. That's a big bummer. Like who did that without thinking this all the way through? I don't know. I'll tell you who. The same person who did the Banneret subclass for this book. Okay, too soon. Knight of the Gauntlet background gives you the origin feat Tiro of the Gauntlet. Kudos for helping us with our vocabulary. I'd never seen that word before. It means squire. Stand as one. When an ally within 5 feet of you is subjected to an effect that would push or pull it, you can take the reaction to prevent the ally from being pushed or pulled. To receive this benefit, the ally can't have the incapacitated condition. Vigilant. When you take the ready action, the next attack roll made against you has disadvantage before the start of your next turn. These are not very good. Kind of niche, and only good on certain kinds of builds for certain kinds of roles. The ready action one, Vigilant, is there's not very many people who want to take the ready action regularly. It's like Rogue, right? Who want to try to create a build like, with this haste spell so they can attack with their hasted action and then use their regular action to ready. And that way they give themselves a way to attack on somebody else's turn to trigger sneak attack twice in one round. But so that's good. Yeah, if you happen to get targeted, now as a rogue, you're trying not to be targeted. So you're hiding, you're running around corners. But if you do get targeted, they're going to have disadvantage. So this one's overall pretty weak and doesn't make sense for a knight, in my opinion. Order's Resilience. You can increase your strength, wisdom, or charisma. Interesting that the Constitution's not in this list, but that's okay, because if you're a strength build, you're building up your strength first anyway. Or you could be like a cleric tank and be building up your wisdom. A paladin, I guess, if you want to go first. Yeah, I mean, those scores work. Resurgence. When you have the prone condition, you can right yourself with only 5 feet of movement. Stronger together. Apes, stronger together. If you're within 5 feet of an ally that doesn't have the incapacitated condition, you and that ally have advantage on strength saving throws. You can't use this benefit while you have the incapacitated condition. So Resurge is bad. Being able to stand up from prone with only 5 feet of movement. I have rarely seen that negatively affect a player character. And the people who get knocked prone the most are the ones on the front line. And you don't care if it takes half your movement because you're not going anywhere. You're on the front line. I mean, it will happen where this matters, and that'll be nice, but it's rare. Because if this was good, then the athlete feat would have been good, but nobody takes the athlete feat. That's not worth it, right? And that even gives you this feature plus climbing speed. So that's a miss. Stronger together. That one's nice. When you are on the front line, monsters tend to have abilities that cause strength saving throws at like melee range that can knock you down, push you back, things like that. So the frontliners, that's okay for, unless you're a barbarian, because then you already have advantage of strength saving throws, so this is a waste. And so even if your buddy has this and they're a fighter, they're giving you this benefit, didn't matter. So this one is great. Tiro, I give it a D for support, D for survival. Order's Resilience, I give it a D for tanking, D for frontliners, frontliner functionality, and a C in support. That's for the advantage on the saving throw. So, yeah, not super good. Lord's Alliance Vassal background. That gives you the Lord's Alliance Origin feat, which gives you Inspiring Strike. Once per turn, when you score a critical hit against a creature, you can choose an ally within 30 feet of yourself who can see or hear you and who lacks heroic inspiration. That ally gains heroic inspiration. Dang. We went from a really crappy one. Is that their pattern now? Like a really bad one and a really good one and a really bad one and a really good one? Because this one's a little OP. Once per turn when you crit, and you can build a crit fishing build, and as long as you crit once per round or once per on your it's once per turn, so you could trigger this potentially twice in a round by attacking as a reaction. You could be handing out heroic inspiration to your allies. The only limit is how often you crit, and once per turn. I mean, that's quite strong. Reassert Honor. When an enemy you can see deals damage to an ally of yours that is within 5 feet of you, you have an advantage on your next attack roll against an enemy before the end of your next turn. Against that enemy. So this is decent. Like, that's not super powerful, but it's relative to other origin feats, strong. And by the way, synergizes with your Inspiring Strike, because if you have advantage, you have a higher chance to crit. So like, get this on a champion fighter and then be like an elf with elven accuracy, crit fishing. OP. So yeah. All right. Lordly Resolve. You can increase your strength or charisma by 1. So yep, good for strength builds, good for paladin kind of stuff. Standard Bearer. As a bonus action, choose up to 3 creatures within 60 feet of yourself that you can see, that can see you. Each target can immediately take a reaction to right itself and end the prone condition, provided its speed isn't 0. Additionally, you bolster the target's resolve, which lasts for 1 minute or until you have the incapacitated condition, while bolster the target can't be possessed or gain the charmed or frightened condition. If a target is already possessed, charmed, or frightened, the target has advantage on any new saving throws against that relevant effect. Once you use this benefit, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. Wow, that's terrible. Okay? So it doesn't even suppress those conditions. It doesn't give you immunity to those conditions. It just means you can't gain them. And then if they resave, then they get advantage. And I hate it when they do this, where they put several things together that are like a grab bag. Like this almost felt like, hey, I had this idea for an ability and this idea for an ability and this idea for an ability, and let's just throw those together into this one thing and trigger them all at the same time, right? Because how often are you going to be prone and charmed or frightened, or somebody in your party is prone, charmed, and frightened? Okay, so you have this weird grab bag of mishmash of things, and we're going to throw it all together. And even worse, once per long rest, like you put a limit, a very strict limit on what I think is a terrible ability. This feat is garbage. It's a D as a healer because you're removing some conditions once per long rest. By the way, conditions like you could be knocked prone the next round again, right? If this made you have advantage on being knocked prone for 1 minute, I don't even think I'd give that a C. They should have given this one at least proficiency bonus uses per long rest. Big miss. Purple Dragon Squire background. This gives you the Purple Dragon Rook origin feat, which gives you Entreat. You gain proficiency with one of the following skills: Insight, Performance, or Persuasion. Nice. Rallying Cry. When you roll initiative and don't have the incapacitated condition, you can choose a number of creatures equal to your proficiency bonus that can see you within 30 feet and give them heroic inspiration. Once you do so, you can't gain this. You can't do so again until you finish a long rest. So once per long rest, you can just give allies proficiency bonus, 2 to 6 allies, just give them heroic inspiration at the start of a fight once per day. That's great. And getting one of these skill proficiencies, nice. It's like 1/3 of the skilled origin feat plus this feature. So this one's decent. Purple Dragon Commandant. You can increase ability score, strength, or dexterity by 1. Okay, nice. Good for any of the martial attackers, right? Encourage ally. As a bonus action, you can bolster one ally you can see within 30 feet. The ally gains temporary hit points equal to 2d6 plus the modifier of the ability score increased by this feat. So your strength or dexterity, again, keying off your primary ability score. Great. You can take this bonus action a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. Hello, where was this on the last feat, guys? And you regain all uses when you finish a long rest. Then you also have Last Stand. You have advantage on all attack rolls while you're bloodied. Wow. Okay. So now you're like a barbarian, right? You have reckless while you're bloodied, without the disadvantage of giving them advantage against you. Amazing. And by the way, these synergize with each other. Well, if 2 of you have it, right? So you can create this like as a group, your last standing. So if you and your other frontliner buddy has this, your buddy can use their bonus action to give you temporary hit points so that you are not as squishy, even though you're bloodied, right? So you're bloodied and you're like, hey, cleric, don't heal me. No, that's offensive. Don't assume the cleric is your healer. You say, hey, whoever the healer is, right? Healer, heal me. Don't heal me. I'm bloodied. I want to be bloodied. But give me bonus, give me temporary hit points. So your ally who also has this is giving you temporary hit points, and then you're giving them temporary hit points once they get bloodied. And that way you're kind of keeping themselves from getting too low. But then you just have advantage on all your attack rolls for the rest of the fight. Wow. Imagine putting this on a level 18 champion who can just regenerate, but they only regenerate up until they're just not bloodied. So you can just stay like that and just tell the healer, never heal me. I just want to always be right above bloodied. And then the first time you get hit at the beginning of combat, you're immediately bloodied and just have advantage all the time now. Amazing. I think this is very strong. So Purple Dragon Rook relative to other origin feats, I gave it a B for support, a C for face because you're getting one of the 3 skills that are relevant for face. And then Purple Dragon Commandant, a C as a tank, a B as a frontliner. Because tanks, I guess it depends on what your taunt ability is. If it's a taunt ability based on hitting, then this would be maybe a B for you. Frontliner, this is a B, right? Because it increases your ability to deal damage. And as a frontliner, you are a damage dealing role. And B for support, because you're handing out a decent chunk of temporary hit points. But this is better than Inspiring Ally and better than Chef in a lot of ways because you can do it as a bonus action in the middle of the fight. You can just hand it out. Now, Chef allows you to hand these out, and people can eat them during the fight as a bonus action, if I recall correctly, which is another reason why I think, in one way, Chef is better than Inspiring Leader. Inspiring Leader, you can only do it after a short rest or a long rest. So I like this one. This one's good. Background that gives you Spellfire Spark Origin Feat, which gives you magic absorption. Once per turn, when you take damage from a spell or magic effect, you reduce the total damage taken by 1d4. You can't use this benefit if you have the incapacitated condition. Interesting that there's no resource cost there. The amount is pretty low. This is like the resistance cantrip, except it only works on damage from a spell or magic effect, which doesn't that's not going to happen very often. That's actually pretty rare because most monster stat blocks now, previously they would have been casting a cantrip or had some sort of spell. Most of them have been changed and they no longer qualify on the strict definition of spell or magic effect as spell or magic effect. So this is not going to happen very often. I would encourage DMs to do something like, hey, if the monster's basic attack basically replicates a cantrip or some other spell, even though it's not called that, just in the interest of making this player feel less bad, generously interpret that as, yes, it's a spell or magic effect. And then they get their 1d4. Okay? Just make them feel a little bit better about this, guys. Spellfire Flame. You learn the Sacred Flame cantrip. Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma is your spellcasting modifier for this ability, which you select. You can also cast this cantrip as a bonus action a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. Interesting. There are not a lot of ways to be able to do another attack spell thing as a bonus action, other than being a sorcerer, right? So now, and that's a fairly expensive one. Quicken Spell costs 2 sorcery points. This gives you proficiency bonus castings of Sacred Flame as a bonus action, which is nice. That is a good way to bump up your damage. Now, the interesting thing here is at low levels, this is going to be probably pretty poor, right? Because 1d8 damage is, not a lot. And you could roll a 1, and then you're like, bleh. But it scales, and cantrips scale well. So, if you're tier 4, level 17, and you're casting this as a bonus action, and you can do it 6 times, and you're doing 48 damage, by the way, combine that with Spellfire Adept, that is a big chunk of damage, okay? Let's look at Spellfire Adept. You can increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma. Great. Good for any spellcaster. Fueled Spellfire. Once per turn, when a spell you cast deals radiant damage, you can expend up to 2 hit dice, roll them, and add the total rolled to 1 damage roll of the spell. Searing Spellfire. When you make a damage roll that deals radiant damage, it ignores resistance to radiant damage. Okay, so, wow. They went hard on this one. And note that it says when a spell that you cast deals radiant damage, not when you cast a spell that deals radiant damage. Because if they said when you cast a spell that deals radiant damage, that would mean you can only buff the damage, increase the damage in the turn you cast the spell because of that phrasing. But this phrasing, when a spell that you cast deals radiant damage, it means anytime, either in the round you cast it or later rounds, anytime it deals damage, you can spend these hit dice and increase the damage. So this will work on Spirit Guardians. This will work on Conjure Celestials, as if that spell needed to be buffed. Dang it, Tiara. I'm looking at you. This is super strong. I mean, it also buffs Sickening Radiance. It buffs Flame Strike that needed a buff. But it also buffs Sacred Flame. I don't know if I'd use it on Sacred Flame because note that this doesn't say it increases the damage to one target. This increases the damage of the whole roll. So you'd want to be using this with AoE spells because it's going to increase the damage that everybody takes. Yeah, really strong. And then Searing Spellfire, notice it doesn't say anything about spells. So this removes resistance to radiant damage for any radiant damage you're dealing. So this is great for paladins who have radiant damage they're just adding. I mean, clerics can have that too, right? Moon druids with their lunar, whatever their higher level, it's level 14, lunar something. That gives them 2d10 radiant damage once per turn on a hit. This removes resistance to that. So this is great. It's True Strike, right? Get this for True Strike. And by the way, when you hit with True Strike and it actually deals, and you're level 5 or higher, so it deals radiant damage. I guess if even lower levels, it turns your damage into radiant damage. You can trigger this on True Strike. So this is I mean, this is way strong. I'm surprised that this is in the same book with like some of these other feats. All right, Spellfire Spark. I give it a B for ranged damage because it just increases single target damage, and that's what ranged is. Ranged is single target damage at range. I give you a D for survivability because yes, it reduces some damage you're taking, but this is a super weak survivability feature. Spellfire Agent, A for ranged, A for blaster. And I probably should have given it a ranking for, I mean, if you're any kind of a tank, frontliner, or skirmisher who deals damage, radiant damage, this helps you too. So maybe I should have ranked it for those two. Zhentarim mercenary background. All right, the arrows had to go a different direction because of the sizing of these snippets. So it goes down first. Zhentarim ruffian origin feat it gives you, which gives exploit opening. When you roll damage for an opportunity attack, you can roll the damage twice and use either roll against the target. Family first. If you have heroic inspiration when you roll initiative, you can expend it to give yourself and your allies advantage on the initiative roll. They are doing a lot with heroic inspiration here. So combine these with some of the others, and or have allies who are giving you heroic inspiration, then you use it to give everybody advantage on the initiative roll. Great. Although if you have a weapon of warning, which is easy to get, that whole thing is nullified. But exploit opening is pretty nice. The person who would benefit from that most is rogues, right? Because if you can trigger a reaction attack as an opportunity attack, you can now roll your sneak attack damage because twice, along with everything, the weapon damage, the sneak attack damage, roll that twice and choose the higher roll. Because it says when you roll damage for an opportunity attack, it says nothing about limiting or restricting the re-roll or the double roll to the weapon damage. Like Savage Attacker says the weapon damage, right? So that means you can only roll the weapon damage twice and take the higher of two. This does not have that limiter. So you can roll the sneak attack damage and everything that goes with it twice and take the higher of the two. And when you get to high levels, that's going to be really great, right? Yeah. So that one's interesting. Very niche build, or good for very niche builds, like primarily rogues. For everybody else, it's probably not worth, re-rolling rolling your damage twice on your, even frontliners, rolling the damage twice on your great axe or your, great sword, whatever it is, and then, trying to take the higher two. That's not worth this, in my opinion. But the Zhentarim Tactics general feat that you get, that this qualifies for, you can increase your dexterity or charisma by 1 to a maximum of 20. You get Retaliate. Immediately after a creature within 5 feet of you hits you with a melee attack, you can make an opportunity attack against that creature. Okay, they're building some synergy on the same thing here. And Versatile Merc. When you finish a long rest, choose a skill in which you have proficiency. You have expertise in that skill until you finish your next long rest. Wow. This one kind of just invalidated the skill expert feat. This is better than that. I mean, that one gives you a proficiency and an expertise. But this is way better than that proficiency. And you can move this expertise around, so this is way better. The only thing that Skill Expert has that this doesn't have is the fact that you can increase any ability score with Skill Expert. This one is tied to just dexterity or charisma. But any face of the party, any rogue, any dexterity-based character, this is nice, especially if you're melee. So the interesting thing about this one, and I'm going to put up the ratings there. So I give us a C, the Ruffian a C for tank, a B for frontliner functionality, and a C for support. Zhentarim Tactics, a B for the tank functionality, an A for frontliner functionality, and then A for scout, face, and versatility. Now, you have to keep in mind that you don't get all three of those at the same time. It's just you can get any of those with that expertise. So you can move it to a stealth, and then that boosts your scouting function, or you can move it to persuasion, and now you have a great face function, or you can move it to like history check, and then you've got a versatility function. So you just have to choose, but you can move it every long rest. And the interesting part about this all is that the class who benefits from this the most is the rogue, right? Getting that opportunity attack. Now you have to be hit. So you don't love being hit as a rogue, but if you get hit and then you retaliate and then you can roll your sneak attack damage twice, this is a great way to trigger opportunity attacks for a second sneak attack yourself. But you just have to build your rogue as a frontliner instead of building your rogue as a skirmisher, right? So you don't want to be, because they have to be within 5 feet of you. So you can't run in, run out, or you'll be out of position, right? They'll shoot you with long range weapons and then it doesn't trigger. You have to be standing on the front line to do this. So you have to build a frontliner rogue, probably multi-class, right? And now you've got an awesome ability. So this is cool for a very specific kind of build. All right, and these ones are not tied to any kind of background or origin feat. So now we're going to do all these together. Coldcaster. You gain the following benefits. Increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by 1. Cantrip. You learn the Ray of Frost cantrip. If you already know it, you learn a different wizard cantrip of your choice. Okay, good that they add that. The spellcasting ability is the ability increased by this feat, naturally. Frostbite. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack roll and deal cold damage, you can temporarily negate the creature's defenses. The creature subtracts 1d4 from the next saving throw it makes before the end of your next turn. Okay, this is weird. So first up, I do think this is strong, but here's a problem, all right? It's called Coldcaster, which makes you think, as a caster, I want this. And if you want to be plinking people with Ray of Frost, or if you have a Chromatic Orb build, sure, this is great because it's a nice debuff on the enemy. It gives it the same debuff as Mind Sliver. Plus, if you're using Ray of Frost or whatever other spell you're doing, you can combine those debuffs, right? Unfortunately, most of the spells that have cold debuffs don't qualify because they're saving throws, right? You're literally talking about Ray of Frost. So you could slow them 10 feet and cause this. That alone is not a great combination. I would not take this feat if that was all I was planning to do with it. Because you only have a few direct damage spells, Ray of Frost, Sorcerer's Burst, Chromatic Orb, Ice Knife. Those are the only direct damage spells that cause an attack roll that deal cold damage. And then you have Elemental Weapon and Spirit Shroud that are not direct. Those are buffs that you put on probably somebody who's a marshal, right? So probably somebody else, or if you're a Gish, you can put them on yourself. And then those deal cold damage with an attack roll. So you probably, again, unless you're a Gish, you probably don't want this yourself, okay? But who is this good for? So I give this and that's a confusion. It's called Caster. So I'm worried that players are going to take this thinking they're going to buff my caster. I'm going to be the cool, no pun intended, the cool cold damage based sorcerer or wizard, right? But this isn't great for you. Who this is good for is some other marshal who is good at who has a feature that gives them cold damage regularly. So like Primal Strike from Elemental Fury on Druids at level 7, right? They can deal cold damage once per round. So, and that only makes sense if you're a martial druid, which most of the time you see a martial build with a druid, it's a moon druid. So this would be nice on a moon druid. This would be great on a Winter Walker Ranger. This would be great on a Blood Hunter who takes I can't remember what it's called, the option that lets them deal cold damage on every hit. Some sort of build like that, or you take one of these spells so you can always deal reliable cold damage. So it's a little bit of a trap because the name makes you think it's for spellcasters, but it's not. It's for other people. So that's unfortunate. Next up, Fairy Trickster. Increase your dexterity or charisma score by 1 to a maximum of 20. Fairy Trotter. When you take the disengage action on your turn, difficult terrain doesn't cost you extra movement for the rest of the turn. I have never seen that matter. I mean, this is kind of like Speedy, where if you dash, difficult terrain doesn't slow you. I have never seen a player disengage and be hindered by difficult terrain. It certainly could happen, but it's so niche. I've never seen that matter. All right. Flustering Strike. When you hit a creature with an attack roll, you can attempt to fluster the target. The target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw, standard calculation, based off of your ability score increased by this feat, so dexterity or charisma. And then if they fail, they have disadvantage on saving throws until the end of your next turn. And you can use this benefit a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. So this is not only a much better feature than the Lord's Alliance one, you're just rubbing it in their face because you can do this proficiency bonus times per long rest, and they're doing their crappy feature once per long rest. Just terrible. And this is a strong debuff. Handing out disadvantage on saving throws, again, not common. So being able to do that, this is great. Very strong. Is a level, I give it as far as feats go, an A level support feat because of that disadvantage on saving throws. The survival benefit of no difficult terrain when you disengage, D. So, but this one's good. I like it. Genie Magic. How many people saw the Genie Touched background plus this feat and thought, cool, there's going to be like a relationship there? No, there's not. Genie Touched gives you Magic Initiate Wizard, and this has no prerequisite. I don't know. But what this one gives you is increase to your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, just like most spellcasting feats. Wish Magic. As a magic action, you can cast a level 1 spell of your choice from the sorcerer spell list that has a casting time of an action. Once you use this benefit, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. The spellcasting ability is the one increased by this feat. When you reach level 11, the spell upcasts to level 2, and when you reach level 17, the spell upcasts to level 3. I really, really wanted to like this one. I do not think it's good. At level 4, if you take this at level 4, it's actually pretty good. I would give this a B at level 4 because it allows you to choose any sorcerer spell when you cast a spell. You don't have to pre-select the spell you're using, right? So you have this versatility to cast a variety of spells. And at level 4, you do not have a lot of spells prepared, and you're going to really benefit from this, right? Because now you don't have to worry about all those niche spells and having them on your spell list that are, at least are on the sorcerer spell list. You can just use this to create those. So you can do Fog Cloud and Grease and, I don't know, Comprehend Languages and a few others. Shield if you're desperate, I guess. The problem is this thing does not scale well, right? Once you get to like level 8 or 10, you have plenty of prepared spells. You're not worried about getting a couple of those kind of spells on your spell list, right? Like, so it loses value quickly. Also, the upcasting goes the wrong way. They shouldn't, or the scaling of this goes the wrong way. They should not have upcast the spell, because if you're level 17, do you care that you can do a chromatic orb at level 3 for free? No, because you have so many spell slots. If you're going to just be firing away, you're using your 4th and 5th level spell slots anyway, right? So you're not going to care that it upcasts. And the spells that you do care that you care about casting are the like niche spells that you need for utility, and you didn't have to put them on your spell list. And of those, only 2 of them upcast, and it's Fog Cloud and something else that are like minimally valuable for it to upcast. Oh, Charm Person, right? Charm Person and Fog Cloud. Again, I've never even seen a player cast Charm Person, but that one does upcast to do more targets. And Fog Cloud, it like greatly increases the radius. Again, Fog Cloud is a nice spell in certain circumstances. Again, I don't think I've ever seen a player cast it. I don't know why they don't cast it. I used it on players and it wrecked them. So, but yeah, players cast Fog Cloud more often. That's probably the best use of this that scales up or upcast. So this one's weird. Mythal Touched. You can increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by 1. Mythal Ward. If a spell attack hits you or you fail a saving throw against the spell, you can take a reaction to roll on the table below to create a magical effect. If an effect requires a saving throw, the DC is 8 plus the modifier of the ability score you increased by this feat and your proficiency bonus. You can do this proficiency bonus times per day. This is terrible. I have emotions about this one. It is not only terrible, it's offensive. Okay, let me unpack that real fast because I don't want to even waste time on this. Mythal Touched. I love the lore of Mythals. I love Mythdraenor. I love all that stuff. And I thought this, and when I first read this title, I thought this is going to be cool, and it is terrible. Okay, first up, it doesn't even help you much. You are not going to fail. First of all, monsters don't use spell attacks anymore, so that's not going to help you. If they have an attack, unless your DM, as I suggested, decides to rule that any ranged attack they make that looks like it was basically a cantrip or a spell, if they rule that that's a spell attack, then that'll at least trigger this more often. Or if you fail a saving throw against a spell, you don't want to be failing saving throws or getting hit. And yet that's the only benefit you get from this thing. And the benefit is not that it helps you most of the time. Okay. So first up, you don't want to be getting hit. It's weak from that perspective. Second, that table is terrible. You have a 35% chance of hurting the party. And that's where this gets really bad, in my opinion. And in the chance of just it doing something bad to you is higher than that. But doing something that harms your party members is a terrible thing to do. Okay. If you think it's funny to take this feat and then just go haha in the middle of combat when you trigger it and you like do reverse gravity and TPK the party, that is toxic playing. You're being a toxic person in that moment. Okay. The only non-toxic way to use this would be ask everyone's permission first. Go to the DM and every player and say, hey guys, I think this would be fun. Are you all down for it? And if everybody agrees, then go ahead, I guess. Otherwise, you shouldn't take this. That undermines the whole point of D&D. D&D is a social game you play with friends, and when done well, it is good for you and your friends. It is healthy emotionally, mentally. It builds people up. It helps us in so many ways. And these are the things I love about D&D, and this undermines all of that. And it's a crappy feat. It's not even good at any of these things. I gave it an F. I've never ranked anything F before. It is an F blaster controller self buff survival versatility feat. Look at that table. It's terrible. You could stun yourself with this. Why would you do this? This is terrible. Okay, moving on. Street Justice. Okay, you can increase your strength or dexterity by 1. Headlock. You have advantage on attack. So your allies have advantage on attack rolls against a creature grappled by you. Okay, interesting. Sturdy Knot. When you use chain, manacles, or rope to bind a creature and add your proficiency bonus to the you add your proficiency bonus to the DC escape or burst the chains, manacles, or rope. Tough Talk. A creature's hostile attitude doesn't impose disadvantage on your charisma intimidation checks to influence that creature. What a interesting grab bag of features. Okay, this is another grab bag feat, and they don't. None of these work together. Like, so they don't. This doesn't synergize with itself at all. But let's look at like the items they listed. So a chain, and all these items basically work the same way. The target has to be grappled, incapacitated, or restrained, and then you have to use your utilize action to try to do this. Use this object on them. Okay. The DC for you to use it is actually pretty low. And it doesn't matter what their statistics are, apparently. All you need to do is beat a DC 13 strength athletics check yourself, and then you put this on them. And then they are restrained until they escape. Now, the escape DCs are already pretty high. DC 18 dexterity acrobatics check, DC 20 strength athletics check to escape, and then you're going to add your proficiency bonus to those DCs. So, whatever, +2 to +6 on those DCs. So that's a lot. Manacles, everything works the same. It's just different checks. So it's a dexterity sleight of hand to put manacles on them. The DCs to escape and burst are higher on this one, and you're going to add your proficiency bonus to those. Rope, the DC is lower to put this on them, and it uses sleight of hand. And the DC is still a DC 20 for them to burst it. So these are actually pretty strong things. The downside is it's your utilize action. So if you're any kind of an attacker, this is taking your whole action. So you're not making extra attack. Is that worth giving it up? Maybe. If you're a grappler tank and you grapple somebody, they're now grappled. You could put this on them yourself. And if your job is to tank, then you don't care how much damage you're doing, right? Your job is to lock them down. So this is a decent way to lock them down. Or you could combo this with an ally in the party who is a thief rogue, right? So you're the tank, you're grappling, and then the thief rogue gets this ability, and they're going to run up and use their bonus action to utilize these objects and slap these things on them while you've got them grappled. That's a strong combo. So I give this one as an A for support because you giving all of your allies advantage to attack a creature grappled by you if you're a grappler tank. Or any kind of a grappler, I guess. You could be a grappler damage dealer, grappler frontliner. I mean, if you're grappling, you're in melee, so you're a frontliner at least. So this is giving your allies advantage to all those attacks. That's strong. The tough talk, super circumstantial. I've never seen a player try to use the influence action to intimidate a creature that is hostile to them. Right? Like by the time combat happens, they're not even trying to talk anymore. They're just going to try to kill people. So I don't know, very, very circumstantial. So this one's interesting grab bag. And here's the full ranking again of all of these. And what a range of feats we have. Like they're the range, and I mean range from really, really good to really, really bad. But I guess we saw the same thing in the subclasses they gave us, right? We got the Blade Singer, which was an improvement. We got the Banneret, which was even worse than the previous version of the Purple Dragon Knight. Like, I don't know. Either they've got different people doing this, and one person's like really knows D&D and is good at it, and the other person's just like writing random stuff. I don't know. This is crazy. But I know it's a long one. I'll put in timestamps. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you next time.